What if I told you that somewhere out there, hidden behind barbed wire and concrete walls, there are events recorded in sealed files that most people will never be allowed to see? And what if one of those files described a night when something entered our skies that should not have been there, something that changed the people who witnessed it forever? The story begins in the spring of 1994 at a listening post built far away from any city, tucked deep into the mountains of Northridge Valley. Officially, the base was just a monitoring station for communications. In reality, it was a place where unusual signals were tracked, analyzed, and, if necessary, buried. On one silent night, a faint transmission appeared on their screens. At first, the analysts thought it was interference, but the pattern was too precise. It pulsed in sequences, almost mathematical, repeating as if someone, or something, was trying to make contact. The transmission lasted only 43 seconds before cutting off, but that was enough. The entire base was locked down. Messages were sent to headquarters, and by dawn, the station was crawling with officials who arrived in unmarked vehicles. The order was clear: suppress everything, deny everything, move on. But 2 weeks later, something happened that made forgetting impossible. Radar stations across Northridge registered a massive object entering the atmosphere. Unlike meteors, it didn't burn. Unlike aircraft, it didn't respond. It slowed, shifted direction, then disappeared somewhere above Blackridge Desert, a barren stretch of land known only for its silence. A containment unit was dispatched. Leading them was Commander Elias Ward, a veteran with decades of service. His men were told they were responding to a downed satellite. But Ward had seen the footage. Whatever it wasn't a satellite. When they reached the desert, the ground itself told the story. Sand had been fused into glassy surfaces. Rocks had cracked in unnatural patterns. And at the center, half buried in the earth, was an object no one could explain. It was smooth, seamless, metallic, yet alive with faint ripples of light moving across its surface. No bolts, no seams, no wings, just a shape that seemed to bend reality around it. Soldiers surrounded it with floodlights and scanners, but the readings made no sense. No radiation, no heat, yet powerful magnetic fields scrambled their instruments. Radios crackled, engines stalled, compasses spun wildly. And then, the object moved. What had seemed like solid metal rippled like liquid. A seam opened, releasing a faint mist that glowed pale blue in the desert air. Every soldier froze. Fingers hovered over triggers. Ward lifted his hand and ordered them to hold fire. From within the opening, something emerged. A figure, tall, slender, shifting in color as though light itself wrapped around its form. Its head was elongated, its eyes vast and unblinking, reflecting the floodlights with a depth that felt endless. It raised its hand, not as a threat, as a greeting. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Then Ward felt it, a pressure in his mind, a thought not his own. Images flooded his vision: stars, endless galaxies, vast civilizations of light. Then fire, ruin, worlds collapsing under shadows. A single word echoed in his head, not spoken but burned into his thoughts: harvesters. Ward staggered, gasping for breath. The being swayed, trembling, before collapsing onto the scorched ground. Chaos erupted, soldiers shouting, scientists rushing in, radios screaming with orders. The craft sealed itself silently, the mist vanishing into the night. Ward knelt beside the fallen being. Its skin was warm. Its eyes flickered open for a moment, locking onto his. The same word burned through his skull again: harvesters. And then it was still. The site was sealed within the hour. Trucks rolled in, equipment covered everything, and by morning, the desert looked empty again. But Ward knew nothing about that night was over. In fact, it had only just begun. Because whatever had arrived in Blackridge Desert was not an accident. It was a warning, and the ones who had sent it were already on their way. Commander Elias Ward was taken from the desert site before dawn. He didn't even get a chance to speak to his men. One moment he was giving orders, the next he was escorted into an armored vehicle with blacked-out windows. Hours later, he arrived at a facility carved into the granite of Ironwell Mountain. a place he had only heard of in whispers. Officially, it did not exist. Unofficially, it was where the government stored everything it couldn't explain. The first thing Ward noticed was the silence. No insignias, no chatter, no signs of ordinary military life. Just endless corridors of reinforced steel, guarded doors, and men in plain uniforms with no names on their tags. He was led into a chamber where the figure from the desert lay inside a transparent containment field. Scientists in sterile suits circled it, their voices hushed, their instruments scanning every inch. Even in stillness, the being radiated an unease that made seasoned soldiers avert their eyes. Ward's escorts instructed him to recount everything he had seen. He spoke of the craft, of the mist, of the word burned into his mind. The moment he said, "harvesters," the scientists froze. They exchanged quick glances, wrote notes, but offered no explanation. Instead, they asked again and again, did it speak? Did it move? Did it leave anything behind? Ward could only repeat the same truth. It had chosen to show him something. The days that followed blurred into a cycle of interrogations, medical exams, and restless nights. Electrodes were strapped to his head, his blood was drawn, his brain scanned. The doctors whispered about unusual spikes in neurological activity, as if his mind had been rewired. But what disturbed Ward most weren't the tests. It was the dreams. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. Vast ships drifting silently across the void. Worlds stripped bare. Oceans boiling, skies turned black. And always, at the center of the swarm, a faceless shadow watching with endless hunger. The harvesters. One night, unable to sleep, Ward wandered the dim corridors of the facility. His escort followed, silent but watchful, until Ward stopped before a reinforced observation chamber. Inside, he saw it, the being from the desert. Its body floated in suspension, pale and unmoving. Scientists worked around it, scribbling notes, adjusting equipment. Ward pressed his hand to the glass. And then, its eyes opened. Only for a second, but enough. Ward froze, his breath catching. None of the scientists noticed. They carried on as if nothing had happened. But Ward knew what he had seen. It wasn't dead. Or if it was, death didn't mean the same to them as it did to humans. That night, the dreams grew stronger. He wasn't just seeing destruction anymore. He was inside it. He felt the vibration of massive engines, the hunger of the swarm, the despair of civilizations that had tried to resist and failed. And in the midst of it, the being appeared, shimmering, its voice no longer a whisper but a force inside his skull. We tried to stop them. We failed. They are coming for you now. Ward begged for answers. Why him? Why show him this? The reply was heavy, mournful. Because you can see. Because the ship remembers you. The next morning, Ward was summoned to a cavernous hangar buried deep within Ironwell Mountain. He was not prepared for what he saw. Suspended by cranes, surrounded by scaffolding and blinding lights, was the craft, the same one that had sealed itself in the desert. Somehow, impossibly, they had moved it here. Its surface pulsed faintly, alive with flowing light. Scientists swarmed around it, running instruments that flickered and failed in the strange energy it emitted. Dr. Evelyn Merrick, the lead researcher, approached Ward with eyes sharp as blades. "Watch," she said. As Ward stepped closer, the craft responded. Its lights brightened, the ripples across its surface shifting, almost as if recognizing him. The scientists erupted in excitement. Energy readings spiked. Instruments screamed with overload. Dr. Marek's voice trembled with awe. "It reacts to you. Only you." Ward backed away, but the craft dimmed, falling silent. When he stepped forward again, it awakened, glowing brighter. It was undeniable. The ship had chosen him. That evening, Merrick cornered him in a quiet hallway. "You don't understand what this means," she said. "This isn't wreckage. This is technology far beyond ours. And it chose you as its interface. You are the key." Ward shook his head. "I'm a soldier, not a scientist. I don't want this." Marek's expression hardened. "It's not about what you want. It's about survival." But survival felt like a hollow promise. Every night the visions returned, dragging him deeper. He saw not just the harvesters' ships, but their purpose. They weren't conquerors in the human sense. They were predators. They consumed planets the way locusts strip fields, leaving nothing but silence. And Earth was next. Weeks passed inside the mountain. The world outside carried on, oblivious. But inside, Ward's life became a cycle of experiments, visions, and questions without answers. The craft grew more responsive, its glowing symbols blooming whenever he touched it. The scientists pushed harder, strapping sensors to his body, forcing longer sessions, hungry for data. Ward's health deteriorated. Nosebleeds, tremors, exhaustion. But still they demanded more. And then, one morning, the alarms blared. Satellite networks had detected anomalies at the edge of the solar system. Objects moving in formation. Not meteors, not comets. Something else. Something vast. The official reports called them astronomical phenomena. But in Ironwell Mountain, everyone knew the truth. The harvesters had arrived. The facility inside Ironwell Mountain was chaos. Generals shouted into secure phones. Analysts pored over screens filled with impossible readings, and alarms echoed through the steel corridors. But amid the noise, Commander Elias Ward felt only silence. He had seen this moment before, in his visions. The swarm was here. That night, unable to bear the waiting, Ward returned to the hangar. The alien craft pulsed brighter than ever, alive, humming like a heartbeat. As he stepped closer, the surface shifted, a seam opening to reveal a passage glowing with pale light. He hesitated, but the voice inside his mind was clear. Chosen. Step forward. Ward entered. The walls rippled like liquid, sealing behind him. He found himself in a chamber that felt alive. No wires, no controls, just surfaces that pulsed with light and rearranged themselves, as if responding to his thoughts. Suddenly, his vision shifted. He was no longer standing in a room of steel and light. He was floating in the void, stars burning around him. And then he saw them, the harvesters. Hundreds of massive vessels, black as obsidian, gliding in perfect formation. They didn't look like machines. They looked alive, like titanic insects crafted from metal and shadow. Their presence pressed against his mind, cold and merciless. They noticed him. He recoiled, but the ship steadied him. You are shielded. For now, it whispered. The vision shifted again, showing Earth below, fragile and glowing, a blue jewel suspended in darkness. He saw the swarm descending, blotting out the sky. He saw cities burn. He saw oceans boil. And he saw himself, inside this very ship, rising to meet them. I can't do this, Ward whispered into the silence. I'm just a soldier. I don't know how. The ship's voice carried the weight of a dying civilization. We did not choose you for what you are. We chose you for what you could become. When Ward's eyes snapped open, the chamber around him had transformed. The ship had molded itself into a cockpit without controls, only light. Straps of living metal wrapped around him, fusing with his skin. His nerves fired like electricity, his vision expanding outward until he could see not just the hangar, not just the mountain, but the skies beyond. Dr. Marek's voice crackled faintly through an intercom, trembling with awe. My God, he's linked to it. Before anyone could react, the ship roared to life. The floor beneath Ward's feet vanished, replaced by a surge of propulsion that shook the earth itself. With a deafening blast, the vessel tore upward, ripping through stone and steel. The mountain crumbled behind him as he rose into the night sky, breaking through clouds, soaring into the blackness of space. And then he saw them, the harvesters. Dozens of vessels had already crossed the orbit of Mars, moving with impossible speed, blotting out stars as they came closer. They opened fire. Beams of searing energy streaked toward him, brighter than lightning. Ward braced, but the ship responded faster than thought. Shields flared, arcs of light snapped outward, and the first barrage deflected harmlessly into space. The ship's weapons unfurled, glowing like the veins of some living creature. Ward didn't control it, not exactly. It was more like they moved together, his thoughts and instincts guiding its actions. He dove, and the ship dove. He struck, and its weapons unleashed storms of energy that shattered harvester vessels into burning fragments. For the first time, humanity struck back. Across Earth, telescopes and satellites captured the impossible battle unfolding above. Bursts of light erupted in the sky, reports flooded in, and every government on Earth demanded answers. People looked up and saw fire in the heavens. For the first time, the world knew they were not alone. Ward felt the weight of it all pressing on him. The responsibility, the terror, the inevitability. The swarm was endless. For every vessel destroyed, 10 more closed in. Their hive-mind consciousness clawed at his thoughts, cold and alien, whispering of hunger and inevitability. His body trembled under the strain, blood seeping from his nose, but the ship held him together. Not victory, the voice whispered inside him. Warning, show them, light the fire. Ward understood. The ship hadn't come to save humanity. It had come to prepare them, to awaken them before it was too late. He dove straight into the swarm, unleashing everything the vessel had. Blinding arcs of energy carved holes through black hulls. The heavens above Earth erupted in light, visible across continents. In cities, people flooded into the streets, pointing at the sky. In command centers, generals stared at monitors in silence. Around the world, leaders realized the truth could no longer be hidden. And then Ward saw it, the largest harvester vessel, looming like a moving fortress at the swarm's center. It was the heart of their formation, the core of their hive. He knew what he had to do. He pushed the ship into a dive, straight toward the colossal shadow. Alarms screamed inside the vessel, energy built to a breaking point. He could feel the ship tearing itself apart, but he didn't care. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about sending a message. The last thing he saw was Earth below him, vast and beautiful. His final thought was not fear, but resolve. If humanity was to fight, they first had to see the enemy. The ship detonated. The explosion lit the heavens brighter than dawn. Across half the world, night turned to day. Windows shattered, power grids faltered, satellites went blind. And for a single, unforgettable moment, every human who looked up saw it, the firestorm in the sky. The swarm reeled, dozens of their vessels destroyed. But it was not defeated. Wounded, they pulled back into the darkness. For now, in the silence that followed, the world trembled. Commander Elias Ward was gone, but his message remained. The harvesters were real. They were coming. And now, for the first time, humanity had no choice but to unite or be consumed. The countdown had begun. The blast above Earth was impossible to hide. For 3 nights, the sky still glowed faintly in places, a scar left by something no natural force could explain. Millions of people had seen it with their own eyes. Billions more watched shaky footage replayed endlessly across television screens and news broadcasts. Governments scrambled to control the narrative. Official statements called it a meteor storm, an astronomical anomaly, a classified defense test. But no one believed them. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. And somewhere deep inside, people felt the truth. Something had come for them, and something had fought back. Inside Ironwell Mountain, what was left of it after the ship's violent ascent, scientists and soldiers picked through twisted metal and collapsed tunnels. They found fragments of alien alloy scattered like glass across the ruins, glowing faintly as though alive. Teams in hazmat suits collected them, sealed them away, and shipped them to laboratories across the continent. Every fragment was priceless. Every fragment was dangerous. Dr. Evelyn Merrick was placed in charge of the recovery effort. She hadn't slept in days. Her hair was singed, her hands burned, but her eyes burned brighter than ever. Ward's sacrifice had given humanity a chance, not victory, but proof. Proof that the harvesters were real, and proof that their technology could be turned into weapons. Merrick vowed not to waste it. But there were others who saw things differently. High above the Earth, hidden stations monitored the swarm as it retreated into the black. Intelligence agencies traded secrets, corporations whispered of profits, generals drafted plans. Some argued the truth should never be revealed, that panic would shatter civilization before the harvesters ever arrived. Others demanded full disclosure, believing only unity could save humanity. And in the shadows, a darker faction began to move. They wanted the fragments not to protect the world, but to control it. To build weapons not for defense, but for dominance. That on the weeks that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. Strange convoys moving at night, laboratories that vanished from maps, witnesses who suddenly disappeared. People whispered that the government had captured an alien being, alive and hidden, its knowledge drained behind locked doors. Most dismissed it as conspiracy, but in hidden rooms, the rumors were true. What no one outside the deepest chambers of Ironwell Mountain knew was this: fragments weren't all that survived. The cockpit of Ward's ship, the living heart of the vessel, had endured the explosion. Broken, burned, but still alive. When the containment field stabilized, its faint pulse could still be felt, as though waiting. Scientists crowded around it, desperate to unlock its secrets. None of them noticed, at first, that the patterns of light rippling across its surface were not random. They were forming something. A code, a message, a voice without words, waiting for a mind strong enough to hear it. Evelyn Merrick was the first to sense it. At night, when the others left, she would stand before the fragment and feel a pressure in her skull, faint but undeniable. Images flickered in her dreams, stars, ruins, shadows that moved like storms. And sometimes, she swore she heard a voice whispering from the dark. Chosen, not gone. She never told the others. Some truths were too dangerous to share. The world above changed rapidly. Nations armed themselves, militaries restructured, and secret programs bloomed under code names that never reached the public. Satellites were launched, defense grids planned. Humanity began to prepare, not openly, not together, but in fragments, divided and distrustful. The very divisions the harvesters had counted on. And yet, for the first time in history, humanity had fire in its hands. Fire stolen from the stars. It was not enough to win. Not yet. But it was enough to resist. As for Ward, his body was never found. Officially, he was declared dead, a casualty of an unspecified defense mission. His name was erased from records, his service files sealed forever. But whispers spread even among the soldiers who had served with him. Some claimed he had been vaporized in the explosion. Others swore his body had been taken by the swarm. And a few, the ones who had seen his ship fuse with him, whispered a different theory: that Ward wasn't gone at all. That somewhere, out there in the black, a part of him still lived inside the wreckage of the vessel, carried with the swarm as they retreated. Watching, waiting. Evelyn Merrick never dismissed those whispers. Because sometimes, when she stood alone in the lab and placed her hand against the glowing fragment, the patterns shifted in a way that felt familiar. Almost like someone was reaching back. Almost like Ward was still there. The harvesters would return. That much was certain. Whether in years, or decades, or centuries, their hunger would bring them back. When they did, humanity would face them not as blind prey, but as something else. Something forged by fire, united by fear, and armed with stolen light. And in that final silence, one truth remained. The war had not begun in the skies above Ironwell Mountain. It had only been announced. The countdown ticked quietly onward. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the harvesters were already waiting.